Kring Kali Kaye Namaha. Om Kring Kali Kaye Namaha. Om Kring Kali Kaye Namaha. Hello everyone, this is Who is Ma Kali to Me, part 3. There's a part 1 and 2. So in this part, I will be discussing her various symbols, using the statue of her I have behind me. And then I'll also be discussing various ritual implements that I think greater description would aid you in your own practice. First, I'd like to go over some of the names of Ma Kali and what they mean. Just a basic translation, basically. But I'll be using this In Praise of Adya Kali by Aditi Devi. I will be placing the pages up as I read them. I did say I would go into some of her names, and I'm going to do that here, but I'm not going to be able to get to all of them because this book is called Approaching the Primordial Dark Goddess through the Song of Her 100 Names. I'm not going to read all 100, but I want to give you a general idea of what some of her names and some contemplations about those names that you can go into for yourself and just kind of give you a general, bigger vibe for her, for Ma Kali. So after this, I will go into the symbols and the usage of some of the ritual implements. Kalika, she who is the devourer of time. Kalamata, she who is mother of time. And Kala Nala Samadyuti, she who is as radiant as the fires that consume the universe. Kapar Dini, she who has matted hair. Kara Lasya, she who has fangs and a formidable expression. Karun Na Murta Sa Gara, she, yet also she who is the oceanic nectar of compassion. Krip Pe Mei, she who is full of grace. Kripe Dehara, she who is the vessel of mercy, the supporter of grace. Kripe Pare, she whose mercy is without limit, she who is beyond grace. Kripe Game, she who is attainable only by her mercy, she who moves in grace. Krisyanu, she who is fire, the female deity of fire. Kapile, she who is the tawny colored one. Krishna, she who is black. Krishnan Daviv Varadini, she who is the increaser of the bliss of the dark one, Krishna. So she is often, and I will also put up some pictures from this book. She is often, there's some Hindu books, Hindu scripture, if you will, that here and there, Krishna is kind of referred as her son, being an avatar, and and every avatar, whether it be Krishna, Christ, Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, every avatar is described, Vivekananda described it this way, is kind of a drop of the mother, the divine mother. Ma Kali, every avatar is kind of a drop of her love, a drop of her compassion, spilled upon this world to aid people at various times, to deliver various messages that would aid people at those times. Avatars keep on coming again and again and again. It's not just one avatar, like religious people would have you commit to, whether it be Hare Krishna or Christians or even Buddhists, I suppose. Multiple avatars, multiple times, so words are taken in various ways and manipulated over time to often form these dogmatic religions. But their words themselves, if you can read them metaphysically and dive deep in them and understand them within yourself, rather than just telling everybody about it, you can see that they're all drops of the mother's mercy and compassion. She is often depicted as being very black. This represents two different things. One, that she's all colors. yet none of the colors individually. She's all of the energies. She's, everything, creation, preservation, destruction, everything in between, all of these things, yet beyond them at the same time. When she's depicted as being blue, it's depicting as her being very causal, because we have the material realm, we have the astral realm, we have the causal realm, then we have the source, the I don't like to call it God. She's referred to as God a lot. In Hindu books, you'll hear they'll jump from Divine Mother, Kali to God interchangeably depending on the sentence, and you have to understand like the context of every single sentence, but it's hard for people coming from other traditions to really conceptualize, like to jump from one to the other that quickly. But it's based on the conceptualization of the sentence, and it kind of attributes to a greater description if you can keep track of it when you're reading some of these books. But she's often blue or black, usually black, especially around Dakshineswar. I kind of think of her as being very black, both all forms and formless. At any rate, I've gone on long enough with this part. I'll go into the symbols, and then I'll go into the ritual implements, and that will be part 3. Thank you very much for watching. In discussing Kali's symbols, we will start with the Trishula, which is sometimes put into Shiva, coming from Shiva, or held by Kali herself. The Trishula, or trident, represents the 3 natures that make up everything in existence: Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. Tamas, darkness, torpor; Rajas, restlessness, movement, seeking after; and Sattva, purity, the process to transcendence, doing the right things, avoiding the wrong things. Now, she holds the Trishula, or Shiva. It comes from Shiva, but we'll discuss when it comes from her, when she's holding it. The fact that she holds it signifies that she is not controlled by the 3 natures, but she controls them. That these forces that make up all of existence are within her control. She is not under their reign, their influence, or control. The Trishula going down, the reason why it is a trident is because it also represents the spine, and how these 3 natures go up and down the spine and stop at various chakras and mix in various chakras, both good and bad side of the chakras. She is the possessor of Vidyat Shakti, which means the lightning or electrical force of consciousness. That is the supreme power. That is one of her very large powers. The bow often represents consciousness. She doesn't always have a bow in one of her hands, but it often represents concentration, rather. The concentration of consciousness. There's a lot of consciousness associated powers with her. That is why she is so powerful. She also holds a sword, a scimitar. It's often a head-cutting type sword. That is, the head-cutting one is what she cuts off the urges. She cuts the heads off the demons. She stops them from existing within us when we offer them up to her, and she wears them around her neck. What the skulls also represent are the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. In many images and in many either images or statues of her, there's 30 of those skulls, or I believe it's 30. They represent the different letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. And this represents that she is master of language. She is not mastered by it. She is compassion, and she holds compassion above logic. She's not held down by logic. So it also represents logic itself, but also her mastery of language and not being mastered by it, thus reasoning. And we'll go to the regular sword, the non-cutting, head-cutting sword, the sword that she sometimes holds in front of her. That is the sword of discernment, being able to tell what is good for one to do, what one should not do, what one should participate in, what one shouldn't, what is the true understanding of an idea rather than the false or corrupted understanding of an idea. The sword of discernment. Now, as we discussed before, she wears a skirt of hands or arms, mostly hands and arms. I don't think I've seen it as far as legs go. Those are actions, bad actions that either a devotee has done in the past, that they have offered up to her, saying that they will not do them again, or one they were thinking about doing, and decided not to do and offered it up to her discernment and her understanding that they should not do this, and they offered it up to her, and she wears them as a skirt. This is often cited as the head of Raktabija. She's often holding a head of Raktabija, that demon that had the, you can call it a power of, when his head was cut off, all with each drop of blood that spurted out, another demon would grow up. She often has a bowl with the head, usually below it, in images or statues, and that's to catch the blood, the drops of blood. Though in the story, she's often depicted as drinking all the blood and not holding it up to a bowl, but the bowl symbolizes it not touching the ground, it touching reality. Raktabija's head. So Raktabija represents desire, and basically, if you satisfy desire, like I discussed before, if you satisfy desire, it doesn't go away. It just wants to be satisfied again and again and again. And it represents that one desire leads to another desire of a different kind, desire manifesting in various forms. Instead of allowing that, she cuts off the head of desire. Now, sometimes she's holding a mace, not always. The mace is up to multiple interpretations. The mace can represent strength, basically. It can also represent the movement of planets, and you kind of have to move the mace in a circular fashion, and it is the form of a globe. It can be connected to planets and her connection to the moving of the planets and the stars and solar systems, and how her beloved Shiva is often considered the dancer who organizes the grander movements of these things in the various realms, and very much tied to them. So sometimes she's holding a bowl with fire in it. That is the fire. It can be the fire of Kundalini rising up the spine, the fire of realization. It can be a number of things. Her third eye in the middle of her forehead is often the shape of eyes or vaginal. This third eye, it is where true spiritual consciousness comes into the world, perceives the world, but is beyond the world. It is often sideways, because it is always sideways actually, because that represents that she sees through multiple dimensions. She doesn't see time the same way that we do. She's not bound by linear time in a singular plane. She sees beyond time itself, and she sees into multiple dimensions as well. Shiva is often, he also has the third eye between his eyebrows on his head. So the Trishula for Shiva represents the same thing it does for Kali, whether it's coming out of him or going into him. They're often shown with snakes. This represents Kundalini up the spine. Snakes are also a symbol of knowledge. And the Kundalini power up the spine is something very much associated with Kali in general, because it needs to go through all the chakras and go up through the top of the head in order for ultimate moksha and liberation to take place. You must purify every chakra along the body, and not embrace its negative side all the way up the body until you are completely liberated. This cannot be done quickly, and is done throughout lifetimes unless one is extremely fortunate. At any rate, this is where I'm wrapping up the description of her symbols and the various meanings behind them. It is often beneficial to meditate before Ma Kali, and it's fruitful if you are able to look up at her during mantra recitation. And when you meditate in front of her, it's good to be kind of below her in devotion. Another thing that you often see devotees of Ma Kali with is a mala with bone beads. This reminds us of the bones that she wears around her neck and the various things that they represent. A mala of this kind, they don't have to be bone, but you might hold it in one hand and go along each one saying, Om Karing Kali Kaye Namaha, Om, go on. Or you can just say, Om Kring Kali Kaye Namaha, and then you start over again, Om Kring Kali Kaye Namaha. You can say it more quickly if you so desire. There's 55 on this mala. When you get to the last one, you do not have to be looking at it. This thread right here will let you know. Another couple things to think about is if you're going to have a puja cloth, which is a red cloth, buy them cheaply, just in case you end up getting burns, but usually she has a red puja cloth. The bell is often used to get her attention or between different activities, offerings, or lighting of things. A simple bell made of brass or copper is fine. Just like most of this, brass or copper is fine. You can offer ghee in a small little bowl like this with a cotton wick and any kind of ghee. You might want to twist 2 wicks together and work the ghee into them before you put the wicks into the ghee and place the ghee separately in there. You might want to angle the wick up and let it fall down over time. It's hard to perch it on the edge sometimes. Nag Champa incense is good for meditation, good for offering in general. Your ghee lamps can look as complicated as this, in which the wick goes in there. You might want to use toothpicks to push it further down, and you fill this with ghee. And you can have a lamp like that, which is also filled with ghee and wicks in the same way. But this one you can pick up and move before her and offering in circular motions. I have a Shivling right next to her in recognition of Shiva. Despite Shiva being underneath her, she is often right next to either a statue or a Shivling to also honor Shiva, her consort. You might want to use some Ganga Jal, which is water from the river Ganga, that you can put it a little bit into a spoon and pour it over the head of the statue of Ma Kali, saying Om Kring Kali Kaya Namaha Om, and it'll run down just fine, it'll dry. And then you can also offer rose water in the spoon as well, and just say, offer this fragrance to Ma Kali, Om Kring Kali Kaya Namaha Om, as you pour it over her. At any rate, this wraps up some of the ritual implements that I thought it would be useful for me to go into for you.